You ever catch yourself staring at your phone like it owes you answers? That same chat window, that same name, that same silence, staring back at you like it knows exactly how to break you. I've been there more times than I'd ever admit. Sitting there late at night, thumb hovering over the screen, trying to convince myself it's harmless to send one text. Just one. Just to check in. Just to see if she even remembers I exist. But the truth hits harder than the loneliness. Deep down, I knew what I was really doing. I was hoping she'd suddenly change her mind, hoping she'd realize my worth, hoping she'd miss me just enough to reply. And every time I hovered over that send button, my heart wasn't beating from courage. It was beating from fear. Fear of silence. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of accepting that she walked away and didn't look back. What I didn't understand back then is that every text I wanted to send wasn't communication. It was surrender. It was me handing her my dignity wrapped in a notification. The moment I texted her, I wasn't reaching out. I was reopening a wound that finally started to close. I was reminding her that she still had control. And trust me, she always knew that. The crazy part? Silence scares women more than any text you could write. They don't remember your messages. They remember your absence. And I didn't know that until I finally shut up. But before I learned that lesson, I was stuck in that cycle. Days passed, maybe weeks, but she still lived rent-free in my mind. I'd wake up and the first thought wasn't about breakfast or plans or work. It was her. Where is she? Did she move on? Does she even care that I'm gone? That silence on her end felt louder than every argument we ever had.
I kept replaying everything. Her laugh, her voice, the last fight, the moment she pulled away. My brain became a broken tape looping the same memories that kept me chained to someone who wasn't choosing me anymore. And I fooled myself into thinking that maybe the right message could fix everything. Maybe if I found the perfect combination of regret and nostalgia, she'd remember what we had. But I eventually realized something brutal. When someone walks away knowing you're still there waiting, your texts don't pull them closer. They make you invisible. You're not showing love, you're showing dependence. And dependence is the fastest way to kill attraction. It took me a long time to see it, but every message I sent after she detached wasn't love. It was confession. It was me saying I couldn't handle her silence, that I needed her more than she needed me. And that's when I understood the truth nobody wants to face. The more you chase someone who's already walked away, the more you push them further. She wasn't going to come back because I sent the right words. She wasn't going to miss me because I stayed available. She wasn't going to respect a man who couldn't respect his own boundaries. And it hit me one night, staring at that empty chat window, thumbs shaking over the keyboard. I didn't need her permission to move on. I didn't need her closure to heal. The closure wasn't going to come from her reply. It was going to come from my restraint. From the moment I chose silence over desperation, from the decision to let her wonder instead of reminding her that I was still there. That silence, that space, that refusal to text, that became my power. And the moment I stopped chasing, something inside me shifted. My world didn't collapse. My dignity didn't vanish. Something else happened instead. Peace. Real, quiet peace. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that maybe the message I needed to send wasn't to her. Maybe it was to myself.
What nobody tells you is that the silence you're afraid of is the very thing that starts waking you up. At first, it feels like torture. You check your phone out of habit, not hope. You scroll through old messages, not because you want her back, but because a part of you is still trying to understand how someone can go from loving you to forgetting you like turning off a switch. That confusion becomes a kind of poison. It pulls you back into memories that aren't real anymore. You think about texting her again, not because you want to be with her, but because you want to feel something familiar. Even pain feels better than emptiness when you're still healing. That's the trap. Your mind starts negotiating with your dignity. It whispers things like, "It's just one message," or "She'll respect you if you're honest," or maybe she's waiting for you to reach out. But that voice isn't wisdom, it's addiction. I realized that the silence wasn't hurting me. My attachment to her reaction was. Every time I fought the urge to text, every time I ignored the impulse to chase her validation, my mind became a little stronger, my chest a little lighter, my peace a little clearer. Slowly, without noticing, the silence I once feared turned into the space where I started to grow. And meanwhile, something else was happening on her side. Something subtle. Something women never admit, but always feel. Confusion. Because she expected the old version of me, the version who'd explain himself into exhaustion, the version who'd send long paragraphs at 1 a.m., the version who'd apologize even when I didn't do anything wrong, the version who made her feel like she could walk away without actually losing anything. But now she was met with nothing. No messages, no updates, no reaction. Just the same silence she left me with. And that silence created a tension she wasn't prepared for. She'd open her phone expecting my name. It wasn't there. She'd post something just to see if I'd view it. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. She noticed both. That uncertainty is what rewires everything. Because people don't panic when you speak. They panic when you stop.
The moment she realized I wasn't playing the role she assigned me, her mind had to rewrite the story. She started wondering if she overestimated her importance, if she misread my emotions, if I had someone else now, if I finally got tired of being the one who cared too much. That doubt, that little crack in her certainty, was the beginning of her shift. Meanwhile, I was learning something far more valuable than how to get her attention. I was learning how to get mine back. I noticed how much energy I used to invest in someone who didn't match it, how much anxiety came from waiting for replies that were never guaranteed, how much of myself I lost trying to maintain a connection that depended entirely on her mood, not my worth. When that realization hits, it changes you. You start to see that texting her again wouldn't bring her back. It would bring the old you back, the version who was willing to shrink just to be noticed. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. Instead of staring at my phone, I started staring at my life, my goals, my distractions, my habits, the parts of me that were neglected because I spent too much time trying to keep her attention. It's wild how much space one person can occupy in your mind until you finally push them out. And as I pulled my energy inward, I changed. I didn't need her to respond anymore. I didn't need to know where she was or who she was talking to. I didn't need to replay conversations or invent new ones. I didn't need a goodbye text to start healing. The silence that once felt like punishment became proof of something important. I wasn't losing her. I was losing the version of myself who needed her. And that is the first time I felt real power again. Not arrogance, not pride, just quiet, steady power. The kind that comes from realizing you're finally walking away from the things that were holding you back. Because the moment you stop chasing her, you start catching yourself.
There comes a moment in every man's healing where something inside finally clicks. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not even emotional. It's just a shift, a quiet realization that the person you were fighting to keep wasn't fighting to keep you. And once your mind accepts that, the chains fall off one by one. I reached that moment on a random day. No build-up, no trigger. I just woke up and felt different. I didn't check my phone the second my eyes opened. I didn't search for her name in my notifications. I didn't wonder what she was doing or who she was giving her attention to. My mind wasn't stuck in the past anymore. It was finally standing in the present. And that's when I understood something painful but liberating. I wasn't healing because she stopped hurting me. I was healing because I stopped letting her. For the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a filter, a separation between who I was and who I was becoming. I started breathing differently, thinking differently, walking differently. My energy wasn't leaking towards someone who didn't value it. It was flowing back into me. And while my world was growing bigger, hers was shrinking. Because silence has a strange way of turning the tables. It forces both people to face themselves. And while I was facing my growth, she was facing her expectations. She expected the old me, the one who'd break in a week, the one who'd panic if she didn't reply, the one who'd send another message just to remind her he was still there waiting. But that version of me was dead. I didn't need her to text back anymore because I wasn't the kind of man who needed to be chosen to feel whole. When I finally stopped reaching out, something shifted on her side too. The certainty she had began to fade. The comfort she felt started to fracture. She began replaying the silence in her own head, the way I once replayed her words. Because when a man who once cared too much suddenly stops, that absence hits harder than any message ever could. She started checking my socials quietly, thinking I wouldn't notice. She started liking old photos by accident. She viewed my stories longer, lingered more. Not because she wanted me back, but because she finally felt what she never expected to feel: doubt. But by the time she realized the silence was permanent, not a tactic, it was too late. I had stepped into a version of myself that she no longer had access to. A man who learned to enjoy his own company. A man who learned to bring peace into his life instead of begging for it. A man who no longer needed her attention to feel seen. And that's the irony. The moment I stopped chasing her, I stopped needing her. The moment I stopped needing her, she started noticing me again. The moment she noticed me again, I didn't care anymore. That's what real healing feels like. Not revenge, not winning, just neutrality. The kind of neutrality that comes when you finally understand that some people aren't meant to stay. They're meant to wake you up. They're meant to show you the parts of yourself you abandoned. They're meant to hurt you enough to force a transformation you were too afraid to start on your own. And once they serve that purpose, they fade. Not because they walked away, but because you outgrew them. So now, when my phone lights up at night, I don't hope it's her. I don't fear it's her. I don't care if it is or isn't. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm living. I've rebuilt myself piece by piece from the silence she left behind. And that silence became the foundation of the man I am now. If she ever texts me again, I'll read it with calm eyes and a steady heart. Not because I want her back, but because I no longer need her to stay gone. The closure I once begged for was never hers to give. I found it in myself. Because in the end, healing isn't about forgetting her, it's about remembering you. And if you're still sitting there, staring at your own phone, battling the same impulse I fought for far too long, ask yourself this: are you really missing her? Or are you missing the version of yourself you lost trying to love her? Let that sink in, and drop your answer in the comments. I'm curious how many men finally woke up today.